Bonjour. Welcome to the Calipolis. I believe the answer to our collective challenges right now is truth and love, and I'm here posting videos to offer insight into how you might incorporate truth and love into your life based on my personal experiences and worldviews. So this is the first video, and the first thing you have to do if you want to seriously and sincerely incorporate truth into your life is you need to accept the possibility that your perception of the world may not align perfectly with reality. Sounds simple, but it is much easier said than done. In fact, most people will never actually take this step. I'm relying on the algorithm to put my videos in front of people who are more likely to take this step. But the truth is, you take Gen Pop, 100 people, maybe 2 of them will actually take this step. And that's because it's hard. And the reason it's hard is because it requires you confront your ego at a foundational level. And once the ego senses that you're chipping away at that foundation and things start getting a little shaky, its defense mechanisms go straight up. And the ego's defense mechanisms are incredibly difficult to penetrate. So for that reason, I like to take a more gentle or philosophical approach to taking this step, rather than the more like aggressive, hard-hitting red pill, everything you know is a lie approach. So I like to ease into things, to keep those defense mechanisms at bay. Now, luckily for us, my boy Plato thought about all this over 2,000 years ago in his Allegory of the Cave in the Republic. If you haven't read the Republic, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You should read it. It's one of the books that's actually had a positive impact on my life. And I'm sure it will for you too, if you're trying to incorporate truth into your life. I've been doing some reading about like content creation and social media, and the consensus seems to be that short form content does better. So we're going to burn through the Allegory of the Cave in this video. I'm going to just cover the main points and how I'm going to use the Allegory of the Cave throughout, this journey, whatever you want to call it, to convey how you can incorporate truth into your life. So I'm just going to go through it real quick, and then I'll wrap it up for video number 1. Okay, so I found this image online. I think it's pretty useful. The story, the Allegory of the Cave, is about these prisoners who are in the bottom left corner there. They're chained in darkness. They live their whole lives in this cave. They can only face the wall in front of them. They can't get up and look behind them. The only thing they can look at is straight forward at that wall where you can see those images. Those images are shadows of those objects that those people are holding in front of that fire. Okay? So they're in the cave, they're chained to face that wall, they can't look anywhere else. You've got the fire here, objects are being held in front of the fire that cast shadows onto the wall. All the prisoners can see are those shadows. That's it. Okay, so key takeaway here is the prisoners in the cave believe that the shadows on the wall are reality because they know nothing else. We, as readers of the story, know that that is not true, right? The reality is the objects being held in front of the fire that are casting the shadows. Those are the real things. What the prisoners are seeing are perceptions of those real things, right? Inaccurate perceptions for that matter, right? The shadows are two-dimensional. They're all black. They offer zero insight into what those real objects are, how you might interact with them in the real world, or how we might use them. But to the prisoners, the shadows are the real thing because that's all they know. Okay, back to the story. So one of the prisoners breaks free from the chains. Okay, he escapes the chains, he climbs out of the cave up into the real world, and he sees like sunlight for the first time. Because he's lived in darkness his whole life, uh, he experiences pain from the sunlight, like it hurts his eyes, it hurts his skin. So it's painful at first, but then he starts seeing all these the real things, right? You can see up there, there's the real tree, the real birds, right? He starts interacting with reality in a whole different level, right? In a whole different way. Plato refers to this as enlightenment, escaping the darkness of the cave into the real world. The prisoner is now enlightened. All right, so quick point here. It's important to note that the journey of escaping the cave was painful, right? He was met with resistance along the way. Once he got out of the cave, it literally hurt him, right? The light hurt him. But ultimately, the pain did subside, and he was able to interact with the real world at a whole new level that he ultimately appreciates. So, after the prisoner escapes, he experiences enlightenment. He sees the real world he sees these objects for what they really are. He is excited, and he returns to the cave to free his fellow prisoners, to share this experience with them. They reject him violently. Okay, they do not believe him. They think he's gone crazy, and they are adamant on protecting their world, in that the shadows on the wall, all they've ever known, is the real thing, and that there is nothing else. And they choose not to leave the cave. In fact, they would rather kill the prisoner who came to free them rather than accept the idea that there is anything more than the shadows. Okay, so to summarize, Plato's main point with the allegory of the cave, at least the way I interpret it, is that most people live in illusions, and their perception of the world is not necessarily based on truth or reality. The pursuit of truth is painful, but it ultimately leads to enlightenment in the end. I would say that, the modern era of, the shadows, the illusions that we live in, might be like media, social media, institutions, even like institutionalized education. Like Plato refers to education as like part of enlightenment, but I think that was a different time. Like now when we talk about education, it's very like institutionalized, more about like memorizing things and taking tests versus like actually truly understanding things, which I would say the understanding is more enlightenment versus like the memorization is more like, a shadow on the wall. Anyway, future video. All right, so that's the allegory of the cave. I'm probably going to reference that story a lot on this channel just because I think it hits the nail right on the head for what I'm trying to convey here. I couldn't have written it better myself. Shout out to Plato. Now your homework after this video is to start flirting with the idea that this cave and the shadows might be a real thing. I'm not even going to ask you to acknowledge that you're in the cave, right? Because remember, those defense mechanisms, we're trying to keep them at bay. We're easing into this. So don't even think that like, oh, I'm in the cave and I don't know what reality is. No, just start entertaining the idea that maybe this is a real thing. Maybe this Plato guy was onto something. There is one more thing. And this is a lesson for later on. Well, I'm not your teacher. This is a lesson I learned later on, but I wish I had learned it sooner. And that is, if you manage to leave the cave, you will be tempted at a diabolical level. And I say diabolical because it's not only intense, but it's sneaky. It's like under the radar. you will be tempted to look down on those who you have left behind in the cave. And you must not do that, okay? In a future video, I'll go over why that happens and why you have to avoid it. But long story short, you'll do all this work to escape the cave you're in now, just to fall into another one. And that other one is a lot harder to escape from than the one you're in now. Okay, so if you leave the cave and you start getting these feelings of superiority, and you starting to look down on, the cave dwellers in contempt, fight those feelings. Do not let those feelings grow. That is very important. I think that's all I have to say for video number 1. I don't have a cool outro yet, so peace out.